Well, they're in the third season of this kind of coaching ticket, so there should be a great familiarity with exactly how they want to play and a great understanding of exactly what they want to do in every area and what Mike Prendergast wants with their attack and what Dennis Leamy wants in terms of the defensive consistency, which definitely wasn't there in some of the preseason stuff for sure. And yeah, they'll iron that stuff out. I suppose the concerns about flags are so true, and like that's always been the story of this team. And we're talking about the business end of the season when they get up against the meatiest, biggest teams. Do they have that pop in the front five? When Munster have had big results, they've had 10 out of 10 performances from their front row in particular, and the second row. And when they've lost big games, that's probably been the area where it's been most apparent. Is just particularly in phase play that ability to win collisions. We know they wanted to recruit at loosehead prop, but didn't get approval for that. So they're kind of going again with what they've had. I think it would be great. He's been completely out of the picture now for a long time. Roman Salanoa. It'd be great to see him back, and apparently he's doing quite well with his rehab. Just to bring a bit more power and a bit more grunt. We know that Edwin Adogbo is still a few months away with his Achilles recovery, but getting him back again will add that bit extra grunt. I think it'd be great to see Jean Klein, though he's not that explosive carrier, but it'd be brilliant to see him back in the mix now as well, following his kind of long-term injury. So I suppose that's the worry you have when they come to the biggest games of the season. But as you said, that Glasgow home semi-final was still there for them. They didn't perform anywhere near their capability on that day, and Glasgow were excellent and deservedly won, but they're still in that mix, certainly in the URC in a big way. Getting beyond the round of 16 in Europe will be a massive goal, and I think the way the fixtures fall for them, it is achievable. They're home to Stade Francais, away to Cass, which will be another absolute battle against Jeremy Davidson's men. They've been pretty spicy fixtures. Then they've Sarries home and Northampton away. Like that's manageable, and I think they should have a greater expectation on themselves, and they'll just be hopeful that they have a better injury profile this season because it was crippling last season. And it's not to make a big excuse, and I think they actually could have done better even with those injury issues. Like some of the performance stuff was just off even without key guys at times, but it was tough for them at times to have a really strong 23 or get a bang off the bench. But if they can be a little bit more fortunate in that regard, it'll help a lot. Because you look at the back row crop with O'Donoghue, O'Mahony, Ahern, Coombs in there, Kendellan, Hodnett, Brian Gleeson, who's going to be back after the opening weeks of the season. Pity about that injury, but that's really talented. That's really combative. No matter what way you line up the 23, you're going to have strength in that area. Crowley and Casey and Murray, obviously they'll be in a battle still at 9, but that's a really strong halfback pairing. Nankivell was superb in his first season. I can't wait to see Tom Farrell, who obviously is one of those, again, slightly under the radar signings, and Connacht didn't keep him, but he looks really sharp in pre-season, and yeah, you never want to overjudge on that, but we know that he's a really quality centre and brings power. Attacker Abrahams adds another string to their back three bow, and it's been a big area change. No Earl, Zebo, Conway, the kind of stalwarts, and Zebo really had a resurgence last season, but again, there's talent there. You'd love to see Mike Haley have a kind of a really solid injury-free season. We know that Nash and Daly have been excellent there. Daly played 13 actually in one of the preseason games, but Abrahams, Diarmuid Kilgallen's come in, so they have quality around the pitch. It's just, can they have that consistent platform from which that can thrive, and the set piece needs to be nailed on as consistently as it possibly can. As Birch said, Scrum had some big days, but Lineout had some really bad days and some real wobbly days, and they just didn't get a chance to play their game. So even without massive power, you can be nailing that line out all the time. Maybe you won't get a thundering maul going forward every time, but I think if they can be really solid in that area with a little bit more fortune, certainly in terms of players being available, there's more than enough in that squad to really make a push and certainly in the URC be in contention.
I think the signing of Abrahams probably does address one area in which Munster were deficient, Birch, whereas they may not have quite the penetration of an elite European team in terms of physical grunt. They've probably added a dimension of speed now,
Yeah.
which does upgrade their back three from last season. Like when you were looking at Munster, like a Munster player to have some kind of a burst or a line break last season, you were still looking to an octogenarian Simon Zebo, who was probably like honestly 65-70% as fast as he was in his prime, and he was still good. Don't get me wrong, but in Takir Abrahams, you've got a guy who's actually electrifying, and like electric was the word that was been banded around Musgrave Park when you were chatting to players before the game, just what he's been like in training, and equally Graham Roundtree after the game. I think they may use him like across the back three as well. I don't think he's going to be necessarily fixed to that left wing. Is it a signing that excites you, firstly, Takir Abrahams?
Yeah, absolutely. My friend of mine, Mike Brennegas, and myself, is coaching in Leon, and he was good to lose him. He's a very attacking minded coach, and he felt it was a big. He felt they weren't going to be able to replace him with a French GIF player or even another foreigner who had the same ability. And I think, he reminds me very much of a guy called Gio Aplon, who Mike and I had in Grenoble. And if you have that dangerous type of profile in your backfield, it's just a game changer. He can just get a little dent when they carry it back, and he's more than capable of getting more than dents. The rest of the game is easier, and it does make up for maybe a lack of power, because, as I said, I do believe Munster, they snap into shape really quickly. Their ability to transfer the ball to areas that are weak is good, and I think he could be a very, very astute signing. I also think Kilgallen will be a decent signing as well. Obviously, Nash and Daly have been excellent, but I think Kilgallen will certainly play a lot, whether that's just for rotation or injury cover. And I know Connacht were gutted that he decided to leave. He's a player that I think has got a huge amount of potential. So they have, they've definitely brought in a couple of backs, plus obviously Billy Burns will lessen the pressure on Crowley. You have the option of playing Crowley and Billy together, some games, or certainly late in games, etc., which I think is also something that they will potentially look at. But they've got stronger in the back line, and I agree. I think Tom Daly is a talented player, and injuries have held him. Tom Farrell is a talented player, and injuries have held him back. But a chance to go to Munster, effectively, it's a great move for him. I mean, a chance to play for Munster is a great move for him. A chance to potentially, reach the heights that he definitely has the talent to do, and just hadn't had any luck. So I think behind the scrum they're better. Back row is excellent. Klein being back in, the Dogbo being back in. No Ty Byrne, etc. No issue. Second row, just can that front row get them be impactful enough against the big teams. They're going to be there. They're going to be competitive. They could win the URC, but as I've said numerous times in this pod, I see Munster as being a team who should be chasing European Cups as well. And I know it's a long time since it happened, but that's where I see them in the overall hierarchy of European rugby. And I just think that's going to be a challenge for them to get to that level this year, with particularly their front row stock.